يا رسول الله يا حبيب الله يا حبيب الله النبي صلوا عليه صلوات الله عليه النبي صلوا عليه صلوات الله عليه وينال البركات كل من صلى عليه وينال البركات كل من صلى عليه النبي صلوا عليه صلوات الله عليه النبي صلوا عليه صلوات الله عليه وينال البركات كل من صلى عليه وينال البركات كل من صلى عليه.
The battleground is the battleground of ideas and ideology. The West hasn't even entered this battleground. It hasn't even understood there is this battleground where it must enter.
The terrorists were Muslims, and they carried out the attacks in the name of Islam. I'm also a Muslim, and I've dedicated my life to fighting the threat of radical Islam. It wasn't until I saw this document written in America by American Muslims that I understood what was really going on, a strategy to infiltrate and dominate America. We all know about terrorism. This is the war you don't know about.
The purpose of the Muslim Brotherhood is to change the character of the United States, to have the United States no longer be the United States.
When you walked into the convention center, they had these big banners, and it said, "Death to Israel, death to America." One of the people who were working with me said, "You know what, Bob, these people are Muslim Brotherhood." I said, "What's that?"
The Muslim Brotherhood started in 1928 by the founder, Imam Hassan al-Banna.
The Muslim Brotherhood had twin strategies. The first strategy is its public face, which is a political organization with charitable organizations. But the core of the organization and the master plan of the organization is a sense of world domination. Their ambition is limitless. Now, in my mind, the Muslim Brotherhood is the mother of all Islamic organization of the 20th century, including Al-Qaeda.
Osama bin Laden, Ayman al-Zawahiri, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, all of these al-Qaeda kingpins, before they formed al-Qaeda, each and every one of them belonged to the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood is kind of the gateway drug to terrorism. Every prominent al-Qaeda terrorist you can name, before he joined al-Qaeda, before he carried out jihad, he studied the works of the Muslim Brotherhood. Across the board, the Muslim Brotherhood is the engine, the ideological engine that makes the jihad go.
The very same political party that has vied for power in countries such as Egypt has also been setting up front groups 5,000 miles away. For decades now, the Ikhwan, or the Muslim Brotherhood, have operated secretly behind the scenes in America. Their influence reaches from the halls of academia, to Hollywood and the media, even to law enforcement, and to the highest levels of political power. For years, the U.S. government had been dealing with Muslim Brotherhood front groups and leaders, though unaware of the secret roles they played in the Brotherhood infrastructure in the U.S.
The West as we see today, instead of isolating the Muslim Brotherhood, actually engaging the Muslim Brotherhood as the organization that's moderate, and these are the Muslims we can talk to. The West is tremendously naive about the danger of these various Islamic organizations.
The leaders of radical Islam, or many of them, realized that they cannot win the United States at the military level. So they plot another thing or another plot to infiltrate America from within.
In August 2004, a Virginia man and his wife were stopped on the Chesapeake Bay Bridge in Maryland for videotaping the bridge's suspension cables. Federal investigators knew Ismail el-Barassi had already been under scrutiny for his connections to the terrorist group and Muslim Brotherhood-spawned organization, Hamas.
Ultimately, that arrest led to a search warrant of Mr. el-Barassi's home, which revealed thousands of documents that absolutely blew the doors open on our understanding of the Muslim Brotherhood movement in the United States.
We had discovered to our amusement that he was actually kind of the archivist for the American branch of the Muslim Brotherhood.
The FBI found a cache of documents detailing the structure of the Muslim Brotherhood in the U.S., including this one, revealing the goals of the group in America. It was titled An Explanatory Memorandum on the General Strategic Goal for the Group in North America. It's dated May 22, 1991. The document named the organizations that could be enlisted to achieve the group's goals. 29 American Muslim groups were named either as Brotherhood organizations or Friends of the Brotherhood. The list included such prominent Muslim organizations as the Islamic Society of North America, ISNA, the Muslim Students Association, MSA, the Islamic Circle of North America, ICNA, and the Islamic Association for Palestine, IAP.
I thought of them as Brotherhood groups, but I think it would have been somewhat difficult to prove. It wasn't until the explanatory memorandum came out that one could say, okay, well, so we were right. These groups are clearly enumerated.
The documents and the information on those documents that we reviewed was entirely consistent with our years of covert investigation.
The fascinating thing to me is that they describe in some detail their thinking. In the United States, you need organizations. Therefore, we set up organizations. Boom, 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 boom. And there they are. And I think that sort of the understanding of the American culture and the American political structure demonstrated by that is rather extraordinary.
The organizations that were on that list represented a huge segment of the Islamic voice in North America at the time.
To realize its vision in America, the Muslim Brotherhood gave rise to a complex interlinked network of Islamic organizations. Groups that present a seemingly legitimate public face to camouflage their hidden U.S. agenda, with civic-sounding names echoing those created in the heyday of the Civil Rights era, such as the Muslim Students Association, MSA, the Islamic Society of North America, ISNA, the Council on American Islamic Relations, CARE. Collectively, these groups dominate representation of the Muslim American community, though not one of them incorporates the words Muslim Brotherhood in its name.
The Muslim Brotherhood is like the Russian doll. It's one organization inside another, inside another, inside another, and it's endless. You never have a complete sense of it unless you have the totality of the dolls. They are very, very clever if you are privy to their master plan.
Organizations working on so many fronts to use our very system, the systems that they deplore, our democracy, our Constitution, our rule of law, our tolerance. That's what they use to exploit their message. That's what they use to protect themselves and to create a facade around them that would allow them to internally operate and seek to achieve their true, often unstated objectives.
This is the headquarters for the Islamic Society of North America, just outside Plainfield, Indiana.
Robert Stauffer managed an FBI investigation into Muslim Brotherhood finances in the 1980s.
When I started looking at the source of this money and where it came from like Iran, Saudi Arabia, Libya, Afghanistan, Egypt, Kuwait, Malaysia, Pakistan. All these Muslim countries were sending money via wire transfers to the United States, to NATE.
NATE, the North American Islamic Trust, served as a financial holding company for Muslim Brotherhood-related groups, including ISNA, the Islamic Society of North America. Its major source of funding came from Saudi Arabia, and other Muslim countries.
And we're talking millions and millions of dollars coming into NATE for distribution to individuals and to organizations and to purchase property.
The purpose of all this money was underscored in one of a series of 1980s documents recently declassified by the FBI regarding the Muslim Brotherhood. The Ikhwan in the United States has as its ultimate goal political control of all non-Islamic governments in the world. Stauffer tagged sources of money to people and organizations, then looked for evidence of criminal activity.
All of these had money going through this currency transaction here. And then where did it go? It went to MSA, NATE, IIIT.
When he mapped it all out, he felt he was looking at a Trojan horse, which became the Bureau's code name for the investigation. Stauffer found that the leadership of many of the Muslim American groups was intertwined.
And after a while, I began thinking, are these really separate groups, or are they all really the same people dividing themselves into different ways for specific political ends?
The memorandum not only named names, it candidly revealed just how the Brotherhood viewed the United States as a target for conquest.
The process of settlement is a civilization jihadist process. The Muslim Brotherhood must understand that their work in America is a kind of grand jihad, in eliminating and destroying the Western civilization from within, and sabotaging its miserable house by their hands, so that it is eliminated, and Allah's religion is made victorious over all other religions. Without this level of understanding, we are not up to this challenge, and have not prepared ourselves for jihad yet. The success of the movement in America in establishing an observant Islamic base with power and effectiveness will be the best support and aid to the global movement project.
It would become known as the Project, a detailed plan for Muslims to infiltrate and defeat the West, an incursion that would compromise leaders and law enforcement, control speech, and change the fabric of America. It would be slow, methodical, and permanent. The mission is clear. Among the primary objectives of the project, use deception in all areas of government and society to disguise the Islamist agenda. Support jihad movements across the world through propaganda and material support. Conduct covert operations within the halls of power in support of the global movement. Infiltrate existing Western institutions and work within them until they can be subverted to Islam.
That's pretty clear as to how they viewed their own objective. And they're talking about the United States here. For the first time, that was almost direct proof of what we had long suspected about their true political goals with the United States.
There was a systematic plan to establish an Islamist beachhead in the United States with the eventual goal of watching the United States crumble from within and establishing Islamic rule in this country.
Something like the explanatory memo is a bonanza for the art of intelligence, because it actually is the target or the subject speaking in their own words about what they intend. You don't have to read too much into that.
These are the words of other leaders of American Muslim organizations that have roots in the Muslim Brotherhood.
I find that there are only two things which are open to our movements: ballot or bullet, nothing in between.
Democracy, the practical freedom, no, we don't want to democratize Islam, we want to Islamize democracy.
The only obligation that we have to live in this country is dollar. Because, why am I saying that? Because we are paying taxes. These taxes are going to killing people, our brothers and sisters. So we better have a pretty good justification for what's here. The end goal of everything that we're talking about is the establishment, the re-establishment of the Islamic form of government.
In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful, guide the leaders of this nation who have been given a great responsibility in worldly affairs. Guide them and grant them righteousness and wisdom.
Siraj Wahhaj, a sometime leader and prominent speaker at events hosted by American groups connected with the Muslim Brotherhood, was chosen to give the first Muslim invocation before Congress in 1991. Here he is after his congressional appearance.
I want to defend this country. You know what this country is? It's a garbage can. It's filthy. It's filthy and sick.
And in 2000, Abdul Rahman al-Amoudi openly supported terrorist groups.
Anybody is a supporter of Hamas here? Hear that, Bill Clinton? We are all supporters of Hamas. Allahu Akbar. Anybody supports Hezbollah here? Takbir.
But al-Amoudi went further than just cheering for these groups. In 2004, he was actually arrested on terror charges. Perhaps what made the al-Amoudi case so troubling was that he was considered by many in the media and government to be a moderate Muslim leader. And al-Amoudi isn't the only leader who's had a problem with the law. Many so-called moderate Muslim leaders have been convicted on terror-related charges. And where does CARE fit into all of this? In 1994, CARE was established by 3 of the leaders from the IEP. And it's well documented that the IEP was essentially a front group for Hamas. So perhaps that would explain why CARE won't condemn terror groups like Hamas, and also why they avoided participating in my Muslims Against Terror rally in 2004.
Out of 26 members on the Department of Homeland Security's Advisory Council, only Mohammed El-Biari gained access to a nationwide database that includes terror watch lists and sensitive FBI reports. It's unclear why El-Biari was granted this special privilege, but he now finds himself in hot water. He's accused of taking confidential documents from the Texas Department of Public Safety and shopping them to the media. His reported goal: damage governor and presidential candidate Rick Perry by showing the so-called Islamophobia of Texas government agencies.
Oddly enough, El-Biari sits on the Texas Department of Public Safety Advisory Council, so this was his own, his own agency that he was sabotaging.
El-Biari is no stranger to controversy. In 2004, he spoke at a Texas conference honoring Iran's notorious Ayatollah Khomeini as a great Islamic visionary. He's written in praise of one of the most influential Islamic radicals of the modern era, former Muslim Brotherhood leader Sayyid Qutb, and he's spoken out against the prosecution of Hamas fundraisers in the U.S. Yet El-Biari has marketed himself as a moderate expert on Muslim de-radicalization, and the U.S. government has taken notice. In 2010, he was named to a working group that helped shape the Obama administration's counterterrorism strategy. Later, Homeland Security Director Janet Napolitano swore him in as part of her advisory council.
But since that time, you told me personally at that time that you were going to look into it. You weren't going to appoint somebody. You yourself were going to look into it. So what did you find out?
I found out that the statements that have been made in that regard are false. They are misleading and objectionable, and I think they
Okay, then, Madam, you need to know that you have people who are lying in your department, because Texas Department of Public Safety has been told the investigation was done. He did access the classified information with his own private computer. He did download the documents that we knew he did. But are you saying before this Congress right now that as Secretary of Homeland Security that it is a lie that Mohammed El-Biari downloaded material from a classified website using the secret security clearance you gave him? Are you saying that's a lie?
I'm saying that is inaccurate. That is correct.
All right. What is inaccurate about that?
A number of things. First of all, we have several people on the Homeland Security Advisory Committee are Muslim. They've been helping law enforcement for a long time. Mr. El-Biari himself was recognized by the FBI.
I didn't say anything about that, so if you could confine your answer to what I said and what you find misleading in it.
Well, one of the things I find misleading is that he somehow downloaded classified documents.
So are you saying that the state and local intelligence community of interest database is not classified?
I'm saying that he, as far as I know, did not download classified documents. And
now, one of the games that gets played sometimes by people who come up here and testify is that they have somebody not provide them adequate information so that they can come in here and say, so far as I know, not to my knowledge, that kind of thing, and they obscure the truth. Has LBRA's status on Homeland Security Advisory Council changed?
No.
It did not bother you that he accessed information?
He accessed some information. What bothers me, quite frankly, are the allegations that are made against anyone who happens to be Muslim.
In 2007, ISNA was named as a co-conspirator in the largest terrorism financing trial in American history. And at a recent White House iftar dinner, current ISNA head Mohammed Majid sat just a few feet away from the president.
Mohammed Majid was sitting at the front table right in front of Barack Obama, but when the official White House list of attendees was published, his name was curiously missing.
It is actually known that the president of ISNA wrote President Obama's speech, which he delivered in Egypt, his first presidential speech to an Arabic country.
Infiltration of radical Islam is so deep, it's shocking.
False accusations of racism and Islamophobia are routinely made against critics of radical Islam.
When I was new on the editorial board with the Dallas Morning News, we had a scheduled meeting with Dr. Syed Saeed, who was at that time the head of the Islamic Society of North America, the largest Muslim organization in the country. Dr. Saeed came in and sat down with us and gave a long discourse about peace and tolerance and Islam and religion in America. You couldn't possibly object to anything he had to say. And his final message to us was, you journalists need to stand with us and help stamp out religious intolerance and bigotry. Great. And I asked him in the Q&A period, Dr. Saeed, if you really do believe in peace and tolerance, why do you have on your board, and I went through one by one the names of people who sat on his board, Muslim leaders, and pointed out the radical things they had said. One had spoken at the Death to the Jews rally outside the White House in 2000. I said, how do you reconcile your public stance of peace with that? Well, he got so angry, he shook his fist at me and said, this is like Hitler's Germany. You will repent of what you're saying. He never answered the question, just shook his fist again and talked about Islamophobia and bigotry and my need to repent and how one day I would repent of being so insulting. So after I wrote my column criticizing Dr. Saeed, I became what a local Muslim group called on their website the new face of hate. My picture went up on their website, and they began to talk about me as the sort of person who is going to lead to violence against Muslims, pogroms against Muslims in Dallas. I signed on to their email listserv just to see what they were saying. With my own name, no deception there, they said we want to make Roger a joke in this town. It was very personal, but it taught me something about the way they work. They weren't willing to take me on and refute me factually or refute my logic. They wanted to run around behind the scenes and convince everybody that I was a raving lunatic who was going to get Muslims beat up here.
What's disingenuous and why we keep falling for it is a mystery to me, is this idea that you can keep presenting little bits and pieces of your agenda, moving it slowly along, and crying foul every time something happens you don't like. Oh my God, you're being mean to us again.
Our job is to change the Constitution of America.
When members of the media or political figures call for investigations into the Muslim Brotherhood in the U.S., there is a backlash.
And while these supposedly moral men and women, these so-called political representatives, carelessly blow their dog whistles,
to me, it seems like this could be more about politics and about kind of making a stand, a very public stand for political reasons, than it is about genuine security concern.
In September 2011, an article appeared on Wired.com that touched off a debate on political correctness and law enforcement. It became known as the Purge.
The track of the story arriving in Wired magazine, always Wired magazine, does send up a red flag in terms of being a conduit for a message, and whether the journalist in question is aware of being a conduit for a message or actually thinks that he is performing great journalism, I cannot say. But it has become a habitual track for this same kind of story. The sourcing has to be coming from the care side of the world, and it does end up on the internet in Wired.
By mid-October, the Deputy National Security Advisor, John Brennan, received a letter signed by more than 50 American Islamic organizations, some of which had been labeled as terrorist financing organizations by the United States government. Of the 13 footnotes, 12 were referenced to Ackerman. In the letter to Brennan, Stephen Coughlin was specifically named for a 2011 presentation to the FBI field office in Washington, D.C., where he claimed that Islamic law was incompatible with the U.S. Constitution.
And I'm in it because I think that the goal is to silence all discussion. Because we can prove that what we're saying is true as a matter of fact, and we can say that it's true as a matter of Muslim Brotherhood's published doctrine or Al-Qaeda's published doctrine, and it's proved it is true as a matter of published Islamic law.
When that was brought to their attention that this information that's derogatory about Muslims or Islam came up, nobody looked at the facts. They just said, shut it down.
It's regrettable that that information was, in fact, a part of a training program. That person is not being used anymore by the FBI, and we are reviewing all of the materials, all of our training materials, to ensure that that kind of misinformation is not being used, because that can really undermine the really substantial outreach efforts that we have made.
On February 8, 2012, FBI Director Robert Mueller met with representatives from 6 American Muslim organizations, at least one of which had been named an unindicted co-conspirator in the Holy Land Foundation trial.
Within just a very few days, the FBI director was sitting down and meeting with some of these groups who were demanding the purge of the FBI documents, and they were also demanding an apology from the FBI director that they were even teaching materials that taught the FBI agents about Islam and the methods and the motivations behind Islam. It's really an incredible story that you'd have them calling on our FBI agents to not even know the basis and motivations for why terrorists do what they do.
The Muslim Brotherhood depends on the silencing of our senior leadership, and they're silencing their subordinates for their doctrine to work. As a matter of fact, it was made evidence in a court of law where they said they were going to get our senior leaders to silence people under them. Civilization jihad through our hands. That's what they mean by it.
According to a February 14, 2012 press release issued by the Islamic Society of North America, ISNA, more than 700 FBI documents and 300 presentations were deemed unusable by, quote, subject matter experts, because they were considered offensive to the Muslim community.
I received an email from within the FBI which had been anonymized. So the people who actually asked me, invite me, sent me an email which had the name removed, the email removed, that they had received from somebody in government, which listed which slides were deemed inflammatory and which had to be removed. And then I said, okay, I'd like to debate this. I'd like to talk to the person who's requesting these things. Could you find out who that person is? After many weeks of trying, the FBI managerial individuals who had invited me could not find out. So the FBI was denied knowledge of who in US government was telling them what can and cannot be said in law enforcement training. And to this day, they don't know.
members of Congress asked for the names of the subject matter experts.
We know there are 3 subject matter experts that your office has refused to identify who have gone through and purged these materials.
That information was then quickly classified.
We finally, in a classified setting, which I don't really understand, but we had the 5 SMEs revealed to us, subject matter expert. Perhaps they're afraid that people will be more concerned about the purged documents than otherwise once they know who the 5 SMEs are.
As a matter of fact, when those training programs were reviewed, the agents that were teaching them were told, your information is not factual and it's hateful. And the agent said, you show us 1 sentence in here that's not factual. And of course, people at headquarters couldn't do that.
But the purge that was being demanded by over 40 Muslim groups is saying we not only want training materials purged, we want trainers purged, the people who are teaching the materials. We want libraries purged. This is shocking because Nazis purge libraries, fascists purge libraries. In America, we don't purge libraries. We don't.
How do we talk about the Muslim Brotherhood if we're not allowed to talk about the fact that they're a specific, they exist by their own words as a Salafi entity to bring Islamic law to the whole world, and in the United States by subverting our government? How do we do that? And the answer is you can't. And so as long as that's the standard, this war's lost.
Islamism is like cancer. You either defeat it or it will defeat you.
They are using our laws against us. They are using our democracy against us. And they know it. They know exactly what they're doing.
The Muslim Brotherhood depends on the silencing of our senior leadership, and they're silencing their subordinates for their doctrine to work. As a matter of fact, it was made evidence in a court of law where they said they were going to get our senior leaders to silence people under them. Civilization jihad through our hands.